I've had an opportunity to interview you today, and I'm really excited to do that. So I have a few questions for you, but before that, could you briefly introduce yourself for the audience?
Absolutely. My name is Fernando Garibay. I'm the founder of the Garibay Institute. The Garibay Institute is the first institute for soft power and public diplomacy. And our role in our institute is to bridge multiple industries, specifically focusing on cultural influence at state and governmental level and cross-disciplinary research and collaboration.
Okay. So you've been invited here for a social leadership development program. So what was your overall thought on the event today? How did you feel being on stage, advising so many students?
It's a great question. I because of my work, I get really unique lens into global leadership, what's happening, the challenges. And I don't think there's been such a moment of inflection in history as there is today. So I'm referring to the geopolitical divide, the economic divide, but also the opportunity. When there's socio-environmental trauma, there's growth, right? So long as it's a seed that is nurtured. And so in my humble little talk, I hope that I implanted a seed that nurtures the next generation of leaders, especially for India, where India sits at it again, at the centerpiece, this potential to have not only a proxy for peace, but a firm, solid representation of peace.
So we talked before, India and Mexico share a lot of similar cultures. So what is one aspect of Mexico that you see in India so much right now?
Quite a lot. We know that a lot of the food culture was imported into Mexico by the trade routes. Specifically, I know very close to me, I was raised and spent some time in Michoacan, Mexico, where our family's from. I was raised in America and Mexico, and there's the Aztec Mayan influence, but there's also the multicultural influence. And Indian food specifically had a specific influence, and music had an influence, all the way from mariachi influences that our music is to classical music is in Mexico, down to the very essence of the work culture alignment, very similar, hardworking, driven by passion, driven by the needs of the people. So there's a lot of similarities, and I say India is very much like Mexico, but a little bit more intense in a good way.
True. Okay. So music has been a huge part of your life. You're literally a legend in everywhere. You have Grammy nominations. You've worked with people like Lady Gaga, Bruno Mars. How has that been like? How has that experience for you?
It taught me everything I know as far as human perception and how people see the world, how reality is shaped for the world. For the one strong beacon, which is very important, is the spiritual quotient, in which many Vedic studies, Christian studies, Muslim studies, interfaith studies have all given us roots to understand each other and our place in this planet. But alongside that, in addition to that, we have the expression of the spiritual quotient through culture, right? And one of the most prolific expressions of culture, arguably, is music. So music has been a way to enhance the spirituality, but also to articulate possible realities, right? So if we look at a correlate, we know that arguably latest research is showing that only 5% of language is being represented and being recognized in the auditory cortex and corpus callosum, prefrontal cortex. Whereas when someone speaks, there is a 95% activity in the subcortical structures of the brain. What that implies is there's more communication happening at the subconscious level than there is at the conscious level. So what's happening in this 95%? Right? When you look at music and how music affects the brain, you see a very significant activity in the subcortical structures. So you could safely assume within a certain degree of accuracy that more information is being transferred to music than there is in language. So much so that music predates linguistics, right? And so when we speak, when there is musicality to this language, right, there's stronger impact, right? We know that in language there's sequential cadences. So when one says a sentence, they pause, says the next statement or sentence, they pause, says the next statement and pause, it becomes musical. That's a rhythmic sentence. And that's how humanity has exchanged information. Still to this day, you see it in pop culture, right? Another proxy to the importance of music. So music as a foundation gives us, in my opinion, a higher order of degree of connection and communication. Therefore, it's extremely important.
So you said music has been a huge part of your life, and you talked about that. So next question I have for you is, as someone who's built a career in music and creativity, how do you define social leadership in your own journey?
I was terrible at it. So when I first started, I thought all I had to do in life was to make the most beautiful music to show my appreciation for being on this planet. And I quickly realized that I could not do it alone. But I didn't know where to begin. I didn't know how to express myself with my vision. And the vision I had is, can I make music that touches everybody on this planet, right? And my mind couldn't figure this out, but my heart could, because what I started finding very quickly is I was looking for people that had a big enough heart to take a chance on me. And through my instinct, I was able to feel who that person was at the time. And it was never an ask, like, please teach me this. It was more of, how can I help you? Maybe then I'll pick up something along the way, maybe. And it was this approach that I was blessed with extraordinary mentors. Some of the greats, some of the names that people recognize now. And to this process of serving, it was returned. Now, it wasn't perfect because I didn't know how to socialize. That was all in my head. It was...
Were you an introvert?
That's not even... It was more of, I was so dedicated to being the best I could at my skill that I didn't bother to learn the skills necessary to connect with another human being. And equally, it was sound for me that made more sense than words. So it was the later part of my career in music that I realized I need to be a master at communicating emotions to better support the work that I will be doing. I had a vision. I had a vision in which music was capable of changing the world in new ways, right? That's why I had to learn how to communicate effectively and become a leader. Now, it just so happens that communicating involves people, and that's what social leadership is, right? Social leadership is understanding the proximity in which growth happens, and the proximity of growth is tethered to relationships. So where do you start? Immediately, now, here, by speaking to you. That is social leadership. Then second is, how do you propel that? What's the fuel source? Serving. Because if you look at this from the perspective of transactions, that's give and take, zero-sum games, right? If you look at this from the perspective of growth, it's, if you grow, I grow, right? That's social. Yeah. That is more than one. So my interpretation of social leadership, it starts with serving.
Right. Okay. Makes sense. Yeah. So you mentioned you've had a lot of mentors throughout your life. What is one advice that your mentor gave you which you will remember for the rest of your life?
Things are not what they seem.
True.
So my favorite lesson was to know what game you're playing.
Okay.
Because we're essentially, my belief system is that we're all children with wonderful suits and ties and great positions that they've earned, but the really brilliant ones are still children, right? And so when you realize that, and do you remember when you were young and you just wanted to have a friend to play with, and when you made that connection, it was everything, nothing else mattered. Okay, if you can make someone feel like that, then you've taken them back to the pure source of who they are. That is the greatest lesson I've learned from mentors.
I wanted to ask about Lady Gaga. How is she? How is she as a person?
A genius.
Really?
Absolutely genius.
Everything I know about her is true.
And more.
Really?
Yeah, I'll tell you a story. So when we were working together, I was on tour with her, and my job was to deliver everything I possibly could to make and support her music. So songwriting, production. I remember she just would not sleep. She would just send me voice memos. So on her phone, she'd record a melody. I said, okay, turn this into something. So we would make music off these voice memos. I'll never forget because it showed that, and she was already successful, and it just showed that her love and passion for art and people were intertwined. And so I think part of that struggle was, do I rest or do I help make someone's life incredible? Can I impact someone's life? Maybe the song will help save someone. And it did. It saved a lot of people. So that was still very meaningful to this day. And she's been a dear friend, and I'm very grateful. If I were to condense one message to the youth of India, it would be this. You sit on the biggest inflection point in human history. India has the capacity to promote peace in a very big way, if not the biggest way. So the challenge here is, with the looming world of artificial intelligence, which I like to call an adjacent consciousness, how would and how will you take your consciousness, your spirit, your heart, your soul, and your discipline to make the world a better place, a place in which we are not divided by lines, but by connected through our commonality. We're all human and we're all the same.
Okay. Thank you so much. This is such a good note to end on, I believe. And I'm so happy that I got a chance to talk to you. Happy that you got to share your knowledge with the audience today.